Evening, everyone. I am Ginat Rice. I'm so happy to have yet another amazing program at the Macrobiotic Forum, the Whole Health Macrobiotic Forum. Tonight we have a special guest with us, and I'm going to let my special moderator, Lenny Jacobs, introduce her. So I want to say about Lenny, how grateful, Lenny, I am to you for all of your help and dedication, all, all the many hours that you've given and to macrobiotic service. Nothing feels better. So let's get going, Lenny, if you want to begin, and we'll bring in Jane.
Yeah, it's not evening where we are. It's 10 in the morning, Sunday. It's a new year, and we're glad to have people from all over the world. Ginat, as most of you know, is in India, and I know that there are people from all over the world, including a few people upstairs in the house that we're sitting in Asheville, North Carolina. We have a few long-term participants also, but I'm glad to welcome all of you, and also in particular our guest, our presenter today, the person many of you know, Jane Stanchich, longtime practitioner of macrobiotics. She says she isn't macrobiotic, she practices macrobiotics. And she's started her practices in another mountainous area in Colorado years ago when she was in search of answers, as we all are still, and she fortuitously discovered several macrobiotic teachers, practitioners, healers, and among them were her soon-to-be or eventually to become her husband, Lino Stanchich, who many of you know of. He was a powerful figure in the macrobiotic community worldwide, teaching, studying, writing, and inspiring people with his enthusiasm as he has inspired Jane. But without Jane, Lino would have been a wandering kind of student. And Jane gave him some stability, and she gives us, as a teacher, a cooking practitioner, a health counselor, and a survivor of Hurricane Helene that ravished our neighborhood, our community, our town of Asheville in late September of this past year. Jane and I have known each other for many years, both in Boston as well as in North Carolina. And I know that she has many stories to tell, many skills to share, many insights to lead us into a fuller, more vital, healthful life. And I would like to introduce Jane as our friend, our mentor, our teacher, and our inspiration for this Sunday's forum. And just to acknowledge one more time, Ginat Rice, who for now over 8 years has been monthly providing a platform, a forum, an opportunity for us to gather from all over the world. And Ginat's introduction of this project with Jane as the presenter today, but with hundreds of people over the years offering their insights and guidance to all of us. So really, thanks to Ginat, and onward with Jane for today. We're sitting here anyhow together. So
yes,
if it seems, I'll let Jane take the focus for now.
That's okay. I'm so glad this is recorded, Lenny, for forever. That's a beautiful introduction. And thank you, Ginat. And I hope you're still enjoying India. And hello to everyone. I see you in the galley, and thank you for joining me today. It's an honor. We have several topics to cover today, Lenny.
Yeah, tell us, Jane, initially, like you shared with us the other day, what your journey was until you discovered, up until the point where you found some kind of pot at the end of the rainbow, the boiling pot of rice and miso soup.
Okay.
What led you to it, and who did you find, and what were your reasons for searching?
Well, as with many people, pain was the great motivator. I had tremendous joint pain. I was a public school teacher and enjoyed my life in North Carolina, but I wanted to explore. So I went to Boulder, Colorado. I had a vision of going to the mountains. I was led there, and it's a very holistic city. And during my visit there, I developed severe osteoarthritis, pain in my feet especially, which I've discovered as plantar fasciitis. They didn't have a name for it then. It was 1981. And I had serious pain and I was not going to stand for it. I was going to find out what caused it, and I was going to explore and study. And during my studies, I ran into this wonderful man named Jane Stanchich, a counselor at that point. He had a clinic with 2 physicians and an acupuncturist. And I went to him because I had discovered that what I was eating was causing my joint pain. And no one had ever told me that before. No doctor had ever prescribed a diet. On the contrary, an osteoarthritis doctor prescribed steroids. And when I researched it, remember the PDF, the physician's desk reference, there were so many side effects from the steroid and the cortisone that I kept exploring and discovered beans. I ate a large amount of hummus one day, and the next day I felt fabulous. So I started putting 2 and 2 together and made an appointment with Lino. And that was 1981 in January. I've been deeply grateful ever since then and practiced the macrobiotic diet. I had tremendous support from Lino. I married my counselor so I could get all the questions answered I wanted to. He was a wonderful companion for all these 40 years. And
Do you remember what he recommended when you first got together with him? Is your initial counseling session and then how you were able to practice that?
well, he recommended the macrobiotic diet, which is grain-based. As most Americans, the only grains I ate were white rice, white bread, some whole grain bread. My mother liked the Roman meal. She was a little bit holistic at that time. But I was not eating a grain-based diet. I was eating a lot of eggs and protein and dairy, lots of dairy and ice cream, and drinking cold distilled water from the spa in which I worked. And he explained that the cold water was chilling my kidneys and hurting my joints. And it's one of the first recommendations I make to people who have joint pain. Stop the cold beverages. Stop them. And in America, when you sit down at a restaurant, what's the first thing they give you? Ice water. And I learned through my studies that the kidneys dislike cold. It's very important to stay warm. And in many countries in Asia, all the food and beverages is warm. It's not cold. And so that was one of the first recommendations, along with the grain-based diet. I grew up in the South. I was very used to having vegetables. We grew up with collard greens and lettuce, of course, and broccoli. So that wasn't a stretch for me. But then he told me about what I call the macrobiotic miracle foods: miso, umeboshi, natto, tofu, tempeh. And I was open to it. I had studied enough nutrition to know that these were very, very healthy foods. And I was pleased. I had Rebecca Greenwood and Christine Palafox and Richard Francis' wife. I had many wonderful people to teach me cooking. I remember going to a cooking teacher and saying, "How do you cut the broccoli?" I didn't know how to make the florets of the broccoli. I didn't know all this. I was used to cooking. My mother was a marvelous home cook, but I studied, which is a requirement, I believe, if you want to master macrobiotics. It requires study. Macrobiotics isn't like going to a doctor and getting a piece of paper with a prescription. It's like going back to school.
What did you think about the salt that was recommended? Because most people at the time were cutting back on salt, and macrobiotic people often in their cooking use more salt. What was your experience and impression about that?
Well, Lino personally ate very little salt. When he was in a communist prison, he had his mother send him salt and onions. It was the only thing the guards wouldn't take. And he ate so much salt in his youth that by the time I met him, he was almost eating no salt at all. So I love salt. I'm a salt snacker. I would rather have, a bowl of corn chips than chocolate candy. So salt to me was fine, but we used it very judiciously in our kitchen. And so it wasn't a problem. We control the salt. We control it. That's the beauty of macrobiotics, is we're in the driver's seat. We make balance for ourselves. So we don't have to follow one recipe. We make it to fit ourselves. So I needed salt because of my mineral needs. Usually when we crave salt, it's because we need minerals. So I began to get minerals from sea vegetables, from the miso, tamari, umeboshi. I was very satisfied. I have loved the diet.
And how did it affect your pain and your joints?
Well, in about 1 month, I had no more pain.
Zero.
Zero.
And it's continued until?
Yes, unless I eat one of my trigger foods, and these are the trigger foods. Bananas. I don't eat them anymore, but I was playing around. You know how we play around. Bananas. Something cold at a party. I might have some sparkling apple juice or something. My pain will come back a little bit in my knee or my hip. Or if I have, what else is it for me?
What about nightshades?
Yes. Nightshades, tomatoes and potatoes. They're my favorite vegetables, but I can't eat them. My body doesn't like them. They don't like me back. And I found that many of us are allergic to foods we overate. And in the South, I had tomatoes every single day with iced tea with sugar. That's how we ate in the South. And so, and potatoes, I'm Irish. Quincannon is my maiden name. And who doesn't love potatoes?
Yeah, you mentioned about growing up in the South and about living on a farm. And can you tell us a little bit about your background and what your lifestyle was like as you were growing up, what your parents did, and how that informed your receptivity to
Yes.
what eventually became coming back to where you started?
Well, that's very, very important what you're saying, because as children, we're given seeds of knowledge. And then as we grow, we remember these. I remember my mother cooking every day. Her mother cooked every day. My grandmother had a farm. We had a 100-acre farm, and she cooked on a wood stove, which is a marvelous stove to have if you can. And meals were very important. It was before the days of a lot of restaurants and even grocery stores. So they got all their food from the garden. They grew every kind of vegetable you could think of.
You were from North Carolina. This is North Carolina?
Yeah, Piedmont, North Carolina. And and we had cash crops too. We had cotton and tobacco. This was before the days we knew how dangerous tobacco was. But so I grew up seeing women mostly, men helped also prepare food. It wasn't foreign to me. And my mother let me in the kitchen. I understand many of my students tell me that their mothers wouldn't let them in the kitchen. They were afraid the young people would get hurt. And so people had a fear of going into the kitchen. But I like to say it's never too late to have a happy childhood. It's never too late to get in the kitchen and learn to take care of yourself, because we're really the only ones who can truly do that. And yes, I get a little not tired of cooking. I get tired mostly of the cleanup, but I love,
That's where Lino probably helped.
sometimes, yes. And the going out to a healthy restaurant, picking my food carefully, choosing my food in the restaurant very carefully, I've been able to maintain very good health for these 40 plus years.
So you didn't feel rebellious as a child, like that everybody else around you maybe was going out and eating candy and snacks, and you were having home cooked food. I mean, I've met a lot of people who the only vegetable they'd ever had growing up was lettuce,
Yeah.
iceberg lettuce, and maybe some raw carrots. But your diet in the past was much wider, it seems.
It was very wide. Always big bowls of vegetables. My mother used to say, fill up on the vegetables, because she was very thrifty. And I had two brothers who were ravenously hungry. So she would have them fill up on the vegetables. So, but I had my share of candy though, and my mother loved to bake cookies. And, but I think sometimes when you have an abundance of wonderful food, you get so satisfied. I was a very satisfied human being. I really was. I was well cared for, well loved, and I really appreciate that.
And so how does that background inform how you would introduce other people who you see as clients, as people, friends who have less experience with vegetables? How do you introduce vegetables into their diet, whole grains and vegetables, and these kind of unusual condiments? What's the method that you use? Is it show them all, or give them a little bit at a time, kind of bring them into it?
Yes, you always do a little bit at a time. And these days, people are very familiar with the plant-based diet. It's even recommended, you go to the Department of Agriculture, they say plant-based diet, whole grains, vegetables. It's not as foreign as it was 40 years ago. But yes, I teach them slowly and carefully about the different foods and show them how to prepare them. And all the people here probably watching have been through classes and studied how to wash and prepare healthy foods. The whole grains were more of a challenge for people, but they're so delicious. I mean, all the grains can be made so deliciously. And I did teach a lot about not just having plain rice, plain brown rice, jazz it up, make it delicious. Lately, we've been adding turmeric to the rice to make yellow rice. We add vegetables. And then beyond that, there's the whole grain pasta, whole grain breads. You see, the other thing I do is I teach them about our physiology. Think about your mouth. Do you have more pointed teeth or do you have more flat teeth? We have more flat, of course, right? Or molars. We are designed to grind grains. We are designed to eat whole grains. I know you're reading a lot about keto and paleo and this doctor who's always on YouTube saying, don't eat oatmeal. And you'll hear many opinions. Just look at your body. Also, your intestines are quite long, much longer than a carnivore's. Dogs' intestines are very straight and short. So the meat goes in and transit time is very quick. Your food is staying in your intestines for over 24 hours sometimes. And vegetable quality food doesn't putrefy in the intestines like animal products do.
So one other thing, going back to your comment about salt, I know it's a little tangential,
Mhm.
but you and Lino, even though you maybe consumed less salt than some
Yeah.
macro people, you became specialists in a
Mhm.
particular type of salt. Can you say something about the salt that
Yes.
you guys discovered? And I don't know, how was it affected by the storm, your supply?
Oh, my supply washed away.
Oh,
I know. But it's been resupplied by
oh,
our
good.
dear friend in Italy. So um,
Tell us a little bit about this. And I think even though a lot of these people are familiar with what the basic macrobiotic practice is, they often have clients themselves. And so you as a
yes.
senior teacher can
Mhm.
share some of the methods that you use with your clients in a way that these participants in the forum will also be able to share with theirs.
Mhm.
So about salt, what was your
Okay.
discoveries?
My husband Lino was obsessed with salt. Um, and not in eating it because he was highly disciplined, but he studied it. He got all these books
Chewing
on
and salt.
salt. Yeah, chewing and salt. And you know, in the Bible it says you are the salt of the earth, and he really took that to heart. But he loved salt so much and knew, I think George Osawa had taught that the tiniest element makes the biggest difference. Salt we use very judiciously, and it makes a huge difference in us physically and emotionally. And so he found that if he had too much salt, he didn't sleep well. He was too keyed up. Salt revved up his engine. It revved up his kidneys, and he became restless. And he found that if he ate less salt and other things that I'll talk about later about sleep, that he slept better. One of my goals, as I had as his wife, was to help him have a deep, long sleep at night. He had been through the war. He'd been through 2 wars, actually. He was a hyper type person. So I really worked on helping him to calm down. And part of that was, I know Lenny's laughing because he knows Lino.
He never really calmed down, but when he was around Jane, he was calm.
Well, in the evenings. And Lino loved to go to bed early. He had such good habits in life. And we won't talk about everything, but he really had a very healthy lifestyle. And one of the ways is he watched his salt. For many years, he would have soup in the morning without the miso. He would just have the vegetable broth, which was still rich in minerals with the seaweed and the vegetables. Then later on in life, he began to add more salt. And one food that we were adamant about salting are beans. We found that if you don't salt your beans, you can have a lot of flatulence, and it's extremely embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. People go running, screaming from eating beans. But CNN just did a big article about how healthy beans are, what a good source of protein they are, and they are. There's as much protein in a cup of lentils as there is a hamburger. We don't need to feel that we're denying ourselves the nutrients when we eat this way.
Anyhow, back to the salt thing. I know that he and Muramoto went down to Escondido for a while and found
Yes.
salt there, and then you found salt in Europe. So just what's the
Okay.
quality that you were looking for or that he was looking for, and what have you discovered?
Well, Lino and I lived with Noburo Muramoto. He was George Osawa's last macrobiotic student, and in Escondido, California, to make salt. Muramoto wanted to go to Mexico, get salt from a salinas, which is where the sea salt comes to the edge of the ocean, bring it back to Escondido, where they would clean it. And Lino was very adamant about cleaning the salt, having a clean white salt. And so they would put it in a large tub and dissolve it. And as you dissolved it and heated it up, they had heaters underneath, black gray substance would come to the top, because in the sea, There's a lot of organic material. There are boats, there's fuel, there's everything. And they would skim off the gray, black substances that would float on the top. So he had the passion of having white, clean salt. I know some people do eat gray salt, pink salt, other kinds of salt, but Lena believed in having very clean sea salt.
So then you discovered a European source. Is this made the same way? Is that?
Yes, we discovered very clean salt in Sicily, which is an island off of the Boot in Italy, and it's brought over to America and then distributed by his good friend, who's also called Lino. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
So you're still able to provide that salt because that seems to be a major part of our diet. And a lot of people are using just regular sea salt that they get at the store, which we know has a lot of microplastics in it and may be refined still to the point where there's nothing more than some microplastics and sodium and chloride. So
Yes.
if there's an opportunity of getting, anyhow, we'll get back to how they can reach Jane in the future regarding sources of macrobiotic condiments as well as some health counseling. Anything else you want to say about your introduction to macrobiotics and how that was informed by your background, by your health, and how it changed? And then how you proceeded with this newfound energy, pain-free, into kind of discovering, teaching, and traveling the world.
Yes.
Because you guys did a lot of travel.
It's been really a wonderful life, and it still is. I had the innate feeling that I was responsible for life. Not everybody has that, but I felt I was responsible. So I searched and studied, and as I said, and I really wanted to find out how to be the best I could be. So I was willing to take courses and to read, and it was deeply fulfilling to me. I had tried in my youth the Atkins diet. I don't know if any of you ever tried that. It's you don't eat any carbs. I couldn't eat corn. I couldn't eat a lot of the vegetables, any grain, and I didn't stay with that. I tried all the different diets. I tried the Stillman water diet where you drank gallons of water a day, and I think that washed away a lot of my minerals. So I tried many, many paths. When Lino prepared the first macrobiotic meal I ever ate, he invited me over and he made a beautiful tray with like Japanese style with all the grain in one bowl, the beans in the other, the vegetables. It tasted so good. I said to him, I felt like I had come home. It really resonated. And that's my experience. Other people eat their first macrobiotic meal, like Tony Sadolero, the physician, and he disliked it. Everybody has their own experience. I grew up in the South with lots of vegetables. So as Lenny said, I was more used to having the vegetables. And I just love them. I still make big pots of a variety of vegetables and eat those throughout the day. And then with my studies with Lino and Michio and other teachers, I learned not to rely so much on processed foods, on breads, and instead to have the whole grains. If I don't eat the whole grains, I really don't feel strong and healthy, and my elimination is not good. Lino and the macrobiotic teachers are very specific about stool diagnosis, looking at your poop. And Lino used to say, your poop is your great guru. It comes to you every day and it tells you the story about your health. So when I'm eating my whole grains, my vegetables, it's really a great result.
What do you tell people when they say, well, it sounds great, but it takes so much time, all that preparation and time cooking? I just don't have time. I'm working, I'm busy, I don't have time for making it. How do you answer
Yeah.
those questions?
That's the question. Do you have time? You have 24 hours in the day. If you set aside 8 to sleep, you have 16 more hours of the day. And within that, if you set aside 1 to 2 hours throughout the day to shop and prepare your food, you do have time. We have time to watch a movie. We have time to do a lot of other things. So I have a way of cooking macrobiotically that's very efficient. I cook enough for 2 days. I cook enough grains for 2 days, enough beans, sometimes even 3. And these days, there's so many convenient foods. Have you noticed now they have kale that's already washed and cut, and baby kale? They have packages. They have organic canned beans with sea salt in my grocery store. My grocery store has those. And it's good to have these things on your shelf, so you have some good protein you can add to a pot of soup. Look, years ago, we didn't have these Whole Foods and grocery stores. And now look what we have. So with all that said and all the convenience foods, I see my good friend Leslie's here, and we're always talking about how to prepare foods that don't take forever. I say, well, if you come in your home and you start a pot of grain or a pot of beans, you don't have to sit there and watch the grain cooking. You get it started, you add your pinch of salt or whatever you like to put in it, reduce the heat and let it simmer for an hour. During that time, you can do many things. Lino and I used to have timers we would put on our belt buckle. We could go for walks, we could go make phone calls, so you can cook these long-term macrobiotic dishes, which are usually grains and beans, occasionally a casserole, wonderful thing, especially here in Asheville where it's chilly. A nice casserole sounds good. And you can have a life and then nurture yourself. How wonderful to have a nice hot meal that you control. You're not relying on the chef. All our young chefs in Asheville are crazy about hot spices now. The young people cook differently than you may want to cook. You're in the driver's seat. You control your health. This is the greatest gift of macrobiotics. You adjust the salt, you adjust the grain. And it's not just brown rice. We have all the grains, which I won't list right now, but they're in all the books and on my website, and all the beans, bean products.
Oh, speaking of beans, what you said about salt, some people feel like they shouldn't put salt in at the beginning of the cooking, but at the end, in order to
Yes.
get, tell us about your
Thank you,
thoughts
Lenny.
about that?
Yes, that's a very important point. When you're cooking beans, this is just for beans. You must cook them till they're soft, then add the sea salt. And for 1 cup of regular sized beans, you can use anywhere from 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt to 1/2. 1/2 has a little more flavor to it.
You're saying 1 cup of uncooked beans?
That's correct. Thank you, Lenny. 1 cup of uncooked beans, you always measure your dry bean. We wash them, we soak them, usually overnight, and then we add kombu to both soften and add minerals to the beans. We bring them to boil. There are other steps too that are very important, like skimming the foam off. And then you get them going. I always put a chopped onion in my beans. It makes them so sweet. Remember, don't just eat plain food. Add some vegetables to it. If you like some herbs, yes, I use herbs in my cooking.
So, Ginat, do you have some questions, if we can interrupt?
Yeah.
On this part of the
Mhm.
discussion.
Mhm.
Are there some questions you'd like to present, Ginat, or the people who asked the question could ask it, however you want to do this?
Yeah, so hi, I've been asking everyone to hold on to their questions, so let me just see what
Oh.
I've got. Da, 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 da. How can we get the salt from you, Jane? That was one question.
Yeah, their
Uh,
website will answer that question. I mean, we'll give the Jane's
Okay.
contact information at the
And
end.
also I've got the link in all of my newsletters, so you'll be
Okay.
able to find it. And then da, 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 da. One woman is saying that she feels like she knows beginning macrobiotics, and she's wondering if we could move into some more topics that are less well known, or there's not a strong consensus, maybe on use of oil, or salt was one of those too.
Mhm.
And Jane, of course, I want to just skip back because I'm so impressed with what I heard, the story about your father and what,
Okay.
so maybe we could also mention that.
All right.
So we'll talk about some use of oil and pressure cookers and types of like advanced, and if there are some advanced topics, and then go back and talk a little bit more about your family's background.
All right.
Also, Lenny, I wonder if you could tilt your screen just a little bit more. So yeah, that's better. Thanks.
All right. So through macrobiotics, I learned about pressure cooking, which I do if I feel weak, or if I need more energy, if it's very cold. Pressure cooking does create more heat. But Lenny, rather than go through recipes for pressure cooking, I do have recipes on the website and in so many macrobiotic books, which they teach specific steps. And I tell people, if you can read, you can cook. And please teach your children to cook. It's a survival skill.
But
Yeah.
I thought that you and Lena had like a kind of a negative bias about pressure cooking grains. That it was something that people did years ago, but that you felt that it was too much pressure and it created a less digestible type of food. Do you
Well,
not feel that way?
no, actually, pressure cooking helps break down the grains and makes them more digestible. Um, Lino is what we call a very young man. He is hyperactive. He was busy, and pressure cooking got him more active and more hepped up, if you want to say. And so we began in Asheville to boil our grains more, but we would boil them in a nice heavy pot like a Le Creuset, which gives good sustained heat. And but every so often, Lenny, we would pressure cook, especially our millet, cauliflower dishes, where we wanted food to become more creamy, like split pea soup and the macro red sauce, the macro marinara. Sometimes we pressure cooked. Everybody's individual. If you're in a hot climate in the summertime and you're more restless, pressure cooking may not be the best technique for you, but you could try it. If, on the other hand, you're fatigued, you're cold, you're tired, and you need more energy, try pressure cooking. It's really magical. So everybody's different, Lenny.
And then in terms of cooking oil, I know there's a lot of controversy over seed oils and over whether even some people say no oil at all
Yes.
in their cooking. So what's your,
Yes.
what type of oil and what's your impression about oils?
I believe that oils are healthy. I do know that there are physicians like Neil Bernard, Colin Campbell, and Caldwell Esselstyn who say zero oil, zero liquid oil. They do recommend avocados and seeds and nuts. But oil suits me very well. I love it. And I think it does many things. It helps the hormones flow better. It helps your skin and hair have more gloss and moisture. It helps many people to go to the bathroom easier. We don't want to get too dry. Oil adds moisture, and it adds the it adds just, I think, a wonderful nutrient that helps us absorb our food better, and it's so satisfying.
Which oils do you recommend, or which would you avoid?
I use organic olive oil from Italy when I can find the really pure one from Italy. I use organic sesame and toasted sesame. And when I'm baking cookies and cakes, I do use organic sunflower oil. Those are the ones, and they're very satisfying. When I gave up butter, my beloved butter back in '81, I started using olive oil as my butter. So if I had a piece of bread or toast, I would put the olive oil in. I crave oil.
So corn oil, canola oil, what do you think?
We have been adamantly against canola oil. Canola oil is really a distilled word from Canada oil, and it was genetically modified. It's very hard to find organic canola oil. I won't eat foods that have canola oil in them.
And peanut oil or soybean oil or anything else?
Well, I don't have them in my kitchen, but I'm sure if I went to a Chinese restaurant, they may use some peanut oil. And I'm in good health, and it wouldn't affect me. But here's something we all, I think, could do well with. After we eat a meal, consider how you feel mentally and physically. Consider, do you have any discomfort anywhere? Do you feel peaceful? How do you feel? And especially the next day, how are you feeling? And this to me was a technique I used, and I still do. I scan my body. I think about it. How am I feeling? Do I have a little twinge in my stomach? Or do I have diarrhea? Or am I irritable? After the flood I've been through, I'm just so grateful. My whole emotions. I'm not complaining or kvetching anymore about anything. I mean, I really am so grateful and happy.
One of the other things in terms of advanced studies, there's been a long time emphasis on using gas cooking, open flame to make our food, I don't know, more vital, more key energy.
Yes.
And yet there's a lot of controversy about the byproducts of using natural gas. There's also concerns about electric cooking, but now there's induction cooking.
Yes.
So do you have any recommendations or comments about the best form of heat for the best quality food?
There are a lot of controversies, and it was predicted that they were going to remove all the gas stoves from the houses. Most professional chefs love gas cooking, but I always teach that you should have a window open or ventilation or a fan that goes outside your house, an exhaust fan that goes outside. Most exhaust fans come right back into the kitchen. I don't know if you know that. It's important to have that. We've taught that, for 40 years. Always have some ventilation in your kitchen if you have a gas stove. We prefer flame cooking, gas cooking. We would love to have wood cooking. I don't know if I'll ever have that in my life at this point, but wood cooking is good too, but it has its negative side effects. It can pollute the air. And I feel that flame cooking is healthier than electric. The electromagnetic fields pull energy out of the surrounding area around the food. They're electromagnetic. And if you study about this, you'll see that electromagnetic towers should not be near human homes or schools. And
We better move from them because easier for us to move than to move those towers, I think.
yes. And
Okay, so you feel still
yeah,
like
I
the,
feel like gas is best. I have a friend who uses induction. I see she's here today. And she loves that. I still feel that gas cooking is the most vital and healthy.
so Ginat brought up the point about your father's experience. I know you had a husband who was a veteran and you had a father who was a veteran. And, you know, could you share a little bit about your father's story and his this, you know, efforts in liberating Europe, World War
Oh,
II?
thank you, Lenny. In 1976, I toured Europe and I went to Germany and I visited Dachau. I did many other things too, of course, and I was very moved by Dachau, and I have many, many Jewish friends, and I've read a lot about the Holocaust, and I feel an affinity to that era. During the flood in September, I found the family memento box out in the mud. They had cleaned out my basement and just threw, God bless them, threw the possessions out in the yard. And I found the memento box and I found a letter from my father. And I found out that he was with the 7th Army, coming over later in the war through Sicily and up with Patton up north to Germany. I didn't know this because I don't know if you know, but the records of the World War II soldiers were destroyed in the fire. So I never knew exactly what army he was in. But as a young girl, I would sneak his letters and read his accounts of seeing the concentration camps and what he saw. And I won't go into what he said. You all have seen the horrific pictures. And but knowing that he was with the 7th Army, I looked on Wikipedia. Where did the 7th Army go? They went to Dachau and opened up the gates and helped the people. And it was very touching to find that. And my father grew up in a Catholic family where they were taught to avoid Jewish people. I don't believe they were taught to hate them, but just to avoid them. And when my father had us, children, there was never any talk in my home against the Jews or the Blacks. You know, I think we're a very compassionate, inclusive family. And as it turns out, I didn't even connect, but my friends from high school, Elisa and Cindy and others were Jewish. And they were always in my home, always. And nobody ever said anything. They were actually the smartest girls in the school too. So it was good to be friends with them in that way. But I just have a real affinity towards that
And you
era.
feel that that was partly due to your father's discovery of the concentration camps?
Yes.
And what was the letter, or what did you discover among your family mementos?
Well, this letter from my father that he had written from Germany, and I have it on my desk in the
Letter
other
to your
house.
family,
A letter,
to
a
his
letter
wife.
to my mother, his wife, and in his beautiful handwriting. And then when I found out what army he was in, because he mentions it in the letter, I guess they didn't have censors at that point, the end of the war. I looked it up and found out he had helped liberate Dachau. And I'm so grateful to Dwight Eisenhower, the the head of the European campaign for videotaping and photographing. He said, nobody would ever believe this if we don't put it on film.
So just to confirm that the Holocaust deniers who could exist,
Mhm.
you have evidence, clear evidence
Oh, yeah.
that there really was such an event that took place
Yes,
during the German Nazi
Mhm.
occupation.
that's right. And there's films. Thankfully, you can see Eisenhower and Patton walking through the concentration camp. So thank God they filmed it.
So anything else from that part of our session, Ginat, that you want to bring up, or can we move on?
Sure. Okay, there is a local salt in my state, I don't know which state, called Redmond. It's dug out of the ground. Would you recommend I use that over sea salt since it's local?
Probably want to test it. I don't know, find out, right?
Yeah, study it, test it. Find out how it's harvested, if it's organic. I haven't ever had that, but I think it was given as samples on the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise, and I have seen it, but I have not tasted it. So try different salts and see how you feel with them. See how you like them.
Yeah, no, Becky and I spent some time in Peru, and we went to a salt mine there, and the salt is harvested from an under the mountain stream, a salt alkaline stream, and they have naturally dried. There are probably 100 or 200 salt beds, and it's in the Andes in Peru, completely uncontaminated. There's no heavy metals, and it is another source. I know. I don't know so much about the pink sea salt. There's a lot of controversy over the more commonly available pink sea salt, but I know that Jane salt and this Peruvian salt are very clean as
Mhm.
far as having
Mm.
a large variety. So Jane has been working on a couple book projects
Yes.
during the past couple of years, and she's hopefully going to publish them both sometime in 2025.
Oh, yes.
So tell us a little bit about these books and what they're about, and what you feel is the message that you can convey, or the books will convey.
Well, the first is my husband's autobiography. He dictated to me during the pandemic, very detailed stories of his life from birth in 1932 to when he came to America. I will be writing one later about our macrobiotic adventures, but this is about his life growing up in an idyllic farm in Croatia, then the Nazi occupation, they took over his country, the horror of that, and all the clever, wonderful things my husband did, a few naughty things too, and his opposition to communism. After World War II, his country became communist with Tito, and the communists, he said, were in many ways worse than the Nazis to them, to the civilians. And he tried to escape and was in prison in a communist re-education camp, which was really a slave labor camp for young boys. And it was really horrific. He was beaten and thrown into a cell. And the book begins with the scene where he is looking at this poor, battered, bleeding young man down on the floor. And he realizes he's looking at himself lying there. And the communists really had the wrong idea of how to inspire young people to be communists. I mean, how are you going to inspire anyone to join your political party and treat them so horribly? My husband's a survivor. And
Is that where you learned chewing?
yeah, I was going to say, before he was captured by the communists, his father, who had been in a German concentration camp, a labor camp, discovered the benefits of chewing his food because they were given thin cotton pajamas to wear, very thin clothing. It was freezing. And his father discovered that if he kept the food in his mouth, warmed it up, 98.6 degrees, the food gave him great vitality. And even he chewed water. So he would chew his water, which was freezing cold water. He would chew soup. They barely gave them any food at all, like a roll for lunch and a roll for dinner. But he would chew it, and he gained strength and energy. Of the 32 men on his ship who were captured by the Nazis, at the end of the war, only 3 survived. Lino's father and the 2 men he convinced to chew. The other men didn't want to chew, but the 3 of them survived. So when he came back from the war, he told Lino, if you're ever starving or ill or cold or weak, chew your food. So here's Lino in this isolation cell, they brought him a little bowl of soup, and he said, I don't know why, but I'm chewing this thing off. And he chewed and chewed and chewed, and it transforms the food, the hormones that are emitted, the breaking down of the food with our teeth, and every tooth is connected to a different organ.
And enzymes.
And the enzymes, yes. And Lino found himself chewing. At one point, he didn't know who he was. He had amnesia. They had hit him in the head. But he started chewing, and he walked. He forced himself to walk as his grandfather taught him. Another youthful seed of information that goes into the brain, walking and chewing. And he was able to survive that. And it didn't happen just once, because he hit another guard in another prison, and they threw him in another isolation cell, stripped him of his clothing, scared him to death. And he chewed and walked, and he got over his pain, and was able, thankfully, to his uncles in New York to get him out of that country. So he was able to survive.
So that's the period that you discuss and that you're covering in this?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's 2 volumes you're going to work on for him.
Well, we've completed, thankfully, my friend Leslie, who's here. She's my editor friend, and Lino's book is complete to this point. Later, I'll do the Macrobiotic journey, which is fascinating. The other book I'm working on is Maggie Cottrell's memoir.
Tell us who Maggie is.
Maggie is Martha Cottrell, MD, one of the first female physicians in America. She's a dear friend and neighbor, and she's 96 now. And she dictated her book to me when she was my neighbor, and then over the telephone, also during the pandemic. And she was a pioneer. She was told, you can never go to medical school. And she did. She had 3 children. In fact, when she interviewed for medical school in the dean's office, they brought in her crying baby, and she put it on her breast to nurse while she was having her interview with the dean of the college. And I don't know if you know, but women weren't allowed to go to medical school at that point. It was in
What year was that?
It was in the early 50s. And women just didn't go to medical school. And she found, though, in Philadelphia, a women's medical college. And it was very well respected. And she went there and had a very, very successful medical career.
Where did she practice?
She practiced in Long Island, New York, and in New York City. She was the medical director of the Fashion Institute of America. And but she also got her license for Georgia and North Carolina, where she lived briefly 2 different times. And she had quite an interesting life. And she herself got bursitis in the shoulder and had lifetime allergies and asthma. And she loved to sail, so she was getting very bad bursitis and went to a doctor who had a copy of Anthony Sattalero's Saturday Evening Post magazine on the table. And she said, if this man can heal his prostate cancer with macrobiotics, I think I can heal my bursitis. So she adopted the macrobiotic diet, eventually met Michio Kushi in New York City, and they started working together with AIDS patients. This is at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic in New York.
Late 70s, early 80s.
In the early 80s. And the men in the program would be in tears and say, nobody even touches us. Nobody hugs us. You're the only ones who care for us this way. They taught cooking classes to the AIDS patients, and they had very good results. Maggie and Michio wrote a book together, and in this autobiography, we have passages from the book about the immunity and how foods so profoundly affect prevention of disease, and the AIDS patients had good results.
One of the things that I recall about Martha Cottrell was that she had an understanding of macrobiotics. Her medical practice, however, gave her kind of a bedside manner, that some doctors, just their touch is enough to give their clients, their patients, kind of support and confidence. And like you say, being able to hug somebody who has AIDS, who has lesions around their body, almost like leprosy. But she seemed to have a gentle, caring, compassionate quality that was as powerful as her dietary recommendations, that she was able to take somebody, give them a hug, shake their hand, and be with them and being really present rather than being she's the doctor and they're the patient.
That's right.
I mean, and how do you see that and that was something that Lino had also.
Yes, it comes with confidence and strength, inner strength, and love of people. Maggie loved people, Lino loved people, and it was his greatest joy. He would talk to anybody and everybody, and as Lenny said, sometimes he talked too much. But he just had a great affinity for people, and Maggie did too. And it really touched us because everybody here listening knows how healing touch is. A doctor who walks you to the door, puts his hand or her hand on your shoulder, and gives you that. It no matter whether it's the doctor or whoever it is, well, of course, if it's appropriate, if it's appropriate, but certainly a counselor, a touch is very healing. We all know that.
One other thing about Lino that maybe some of you don't know is in terms of his encouraging people to chew well, was that when people came to his house or even when he went to other people's homes, he often had a stopwatch that he used on the table. I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that? About like how long you should keep the food in your mouth? There was that kind of aphorism, drink your solids and chew your liquids. And he wrote a book about chewing. What about this timer that he used?
Well, he sometimes used a timer. Sometimes he would count, and then very often he would just chew until the food was liquid.
But when he went to people's
broke it
homes to
down.
encourage,
Yeah, he used he did have stopwatches. He had all these timers. He was just very specific and linear in his thinking about putting the science behind the chewing. He didn't just say, "Oh, why don't you chew your food?" He deeply wanted people to chew, and sometimes at dinner parties, you would see him he'd be there just eating quietly and chewing, because you know what? He felt better. He felt so much better. If he didn't chew, the food didn't digest well. And later, I'm going to talk about sleep. And that's one of the most important things, is to have good digestion. So when you lie down at night, there's this beautiful feeling all through your body of digesting. And so chewing is very, very important. And it's written up, it's spoken of by Gandhi and Jesus and many great healers to chew.
so what do you think about these books? People should just be checking your website to find out
Yes.
when and where they'll be available?
Yes.
You think 2025?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I believe I'm going to put the Leno's autobiography right away. It's going through a final edit and organization on Kindle. So it'll be available, and then it will be in books, print on demand. Then we are presenting it to some publishers, but that, I understand that can take years. So we wanted to get it out right away.
Great, great. I'm sure we're all looking forward to
Thank
reading
you.
that.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions, Ginat, or?
Yes, we have multiple people
Okay.
or so asking, can we segue into the sleep segment? And I thought maybe,
Yeah,
I thought maybe they're tired. And I
One of the
wondered,
areas
Jane, what
that-
kind of relationship is there between the chewing and restful sleep?
Yeah, chewing as well as other recommendations. Jane has been helping many people, including Leno, with their sleep concerns, and I know that's a common one. There are a couple others too that there's the issues of physical pain, if you want to talk about that, as well as stress, agitation, and sleep. Maybe they're all related. So if you can go into like your evaluation of what are the causes, what are the symptoms we know, what are the causes, and what are the treatments that you would recommend?
Okay. I want to begin this talk about sleep by having empathy with you and camaraderie that this is a scary world right now. I think it always has been, but we hear about everything. Everything's analyzed and broadcast. So I think it's quite natural at times to have anxiety. But if anxiety is taking over our lives, if it's affecting our sleep, then it can really affect our health deeply. Sleep is when the body mends. Shakespeare says, sleep that knits up the raveled sleeves of care. And it's one of his wisest sayings that sleep is essential. Now, it's generally recommended we have 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but there are exceptions. There are people such as Martha Stewart who gets by with 3. She's a very hyper woman and gets a lot accomplished. But we need to feel rested. And so many people have trouble sleeping. So I'm going to list a variety of wonderful techniques. They're effective techniques that can help us sleep better. I'm going to begin with food. After I have talked about anxiety, but I'm going to begin with food now. The more salt we eat, the more hard baked foods like pretzels, chips, hard bread crust, toasted bread, the more animal food we eat, these combine with others I'll mention to affect our livers, our digestion, and our sleep. I recommend if you do have animal food, which usually in macrobiotics, that's fish, and very often white fish, but it can include other animal food, to have that earlier in the day. And I don't know if you know, but restaurant food is sometimes 4 times more salty than your food. So if you're going out to eat a heavy meal at 6 or 7 at night, it's going to be loaded with salt in a restaurant. It will impede your sleep. So if you are having the animal food, we recommend having it not every day, but when you do have it, try having it at lunch, or perhaps less quantity. Take some home. All restaurants provide containers to take home food. Caffeine is the big influence. If you have trouble sleeping, you either have to reduce your caffeine or eliminate it. Caffeine is, of course, highest in coffee, and the highest of all is espresso. But it's also in black tea and chocolate. I'm finding a lot of people are buying that erroneous theory that chocolate is a health food. I even know a woman who eats it like it's a vitamin. Yes, it's delicious. I'm not going to deny that. But carob is also better. It has less caffeine in it. And when chocolate is put into a shape, a bar, a drop, it is hardened with fats. It's hardened with palm oil or hard fats, and it affects the liver. Chocolate is not a health food, but how can anything be so delicious? And, you know, it's just one of those things that if you're having trouble sleeping, chocolate can keep you up. It has caffeine in it. Okay, I've mentioned restaurant food, hard food, snacks. Eating popcorn and watching a movie at 9 at night, the popcorn is very salty, usually if it's commercial or if you've salted it. This can keep you awake. The other very important thing is to stay hydrated. If our muscles are salty, if they are tight, we call it macrobiotics yang, contracted by, again, salty bread crust, snacks, chips, it can affect our livers, and then the liver in turn affects our muscles. So we're jerking around in bed. We can't get comfortable. We're irritable. We're restless, and we're at a loss. So we need to stay hydrated. Hydration is very, very important. We recommend spring water or healthy water that's been tested. It has the minerals in it. Well water can certainly be healthy. And we recommend pre-boiling water, because these days there can be bacteria in the water. And what's easier than boiling a pot of water? Then I put it in a ball jar, a quart jar, and then I can see that's 4 cups of water. In addition to teas and beverages and soup, you'll be getting around 8 cups of water a day. Everybody's different. We have different climates, different professions. Athletes need more water. Find the amount of water that suits you. Also, before bed, if you have a cup of well-steeped chamomile tea, it's classic. Don't just dip the bag in for 2 seconds. Let it sit there in the water and have it about an hour before bed. Avoid eating several hours before bed, and set up a regular schedule for yourself. It's just very important. And people who really have trouble sleeping do well with a sleep journal. Tonight, I'm going to bed at 11 o'clock. Here's how many hours I slept, how many hours I got up to urinate, frequent urination keeps people awake as well. So maybe in the afternoon, you don't have so many liquids. We don't want you to get up 5 times at night to urinate. Getting up once certainly is normal, but you should be able to go right back to sleep. We recommend not having bright light in your bedroom. Like if you get up to urinate, don't turn on the bright light. Some of us even have flashlights that we use to keep the lights dim. It's good to have your room dark and a little bit cooler. They say 65 is ideal. They say that the scientists say that. A room that's too hot or stuffy can keep you awake. My husband and I cracked our window every day of the year and got fresh air at night. Depending on your bedroom location and the safety of your house, you may not want to open it up all the time, but the classic macrobiotic recommendation is to have green plants in your bedroom. They put out oxygen. They refresh the room. So in your bedroom, put green plants.
What about the orientation? Like, do you feel like something about your head should
yeah.
be to the north, to the east, or?
Well, our macrobiotic teachers used to have always said the head to the north is the healthiest because you're, you know, that is the best for strength. But the second best would be east. But you can experiment, with the direction you like.
But recognizing that that might have an impact on your
Yes,
sleep.
that could have an impact. Some people even find that underneath their bedroom, there's a stream running, which is not healthy for the body. It's not good feng shui. Get your house checked out. Find out about any streams or any influences that could be in your house. Also, some people have electric meters right outside their bed, outside on the exterior wall. They have electric meters, and we pay extra every month, so we don't have a smart meter. Some people, have you heard of the smart meters? And you don't sleep with your cell phone next to your ear. There's so many things. I wrote articles. You can look on my website newsletters for my articles about sleep diet and sleep lifestyle. They're at
Besides chamomile tea, are there any other kind of remedies that you would recommend before going to sleep?
Yes, one of the really effective ones I have here is shiitake tea. Shiitakes are mushrooms, wild mushrooms that are wonderful. Well, they're cultivated now, of course, but they're grown on oak logs. They're grown here in Western North Carolina and also imported. And you steep one mushroom in 2 cups of water, bring it to boil, and then simmer it for about 15 minutes and drink that. It's very relaxing.
No salt?
No salt. Not before bed, no. But you can use shiitakes in cooking as gravies, and I use shiitakes every day.
What about lemon or some citrus in the hot water before going to sleep?
Well,
is that good for calming the liver, or what do you think?
Yes, I think so. I think with warm water, not cold, but warm water with lemon is very good to calm the liver, which I've mentioned can be agitated. If you seem to be an agitated person, people are ticking you off, people are making you irritable, if you're angry too often, if you know, well, there are many terms for it, but you know what I mean. Nurturing your liver is very important. And one of the best things for the liver and for sleep is to have dark leafy greens every day. Dark leafy greens. Just cook a batch of them every day and eat them throughout the day. Collards, kale, mustard greens, broccoli, bok choy. Make a pot of greens, and I even drink the greens water. I'm kind of eating a little differently now because I'm on a camping stove, but I'm drinking the greens water, and greens are very high in magnesium. Some people find that taking magnesium is helpful, but I just recommend eating it. So eating the magnesium in dark leafy greens is very, very healthy. That's one of the early macrobiotic teachings, way before people started eating kale, was eating greens.
Some people wake up with leg cramps.
Mhm.
Is that something also that you
Mhm.
feel like the magnesium, or what else would
Yes.
you recommend
Uh,
to avoid leg cramps?
Leg cramps are from dehydration. Your muscles are seizing up. Be sure you drink throughout the day and have your dark leafy greens, magnesium.
So you're recommending like it's a whole day program, even though you're only thinking about the night.
Yes.
People think like, oh, I got to take a sleeping pill right before I go to sleep.
Yes.
But you're talking about preparing all day long
All day long.
for the night. So then a good night's sleep, you're feeling better for the whole next day. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
all is a complement rather than an either or.
Yes. What we eat affects us for weeks. But especially the 24 hours after we eat it. So yes, that's why we don't just eat greens on Monday, have them every day. And I'm recommending this year, people grow your own greens, grow them in pots on your balcony, grow them in your yard. Then you just go out, they're right there for you. And it's beautiful to do if you have a small plot.
Another thing that happens when people are sleeping with someone else who snores is,
Mhm.
and snoring can really disturb the other person's sleep. I don't know.
Yes.
Is there anything you would say about that?
Yes. Um,
Earplugs?
definitely earplugs, separate rooms. Um, um, uh, the person who snores needs to stop eating dairy products. Everything from cheese to ice cream to milk, which can congest the sinuses. But often it's structural, and they have so many aids now that I see in the media, for mouth guards and for nose guards and clips on the nose. I would say try these, and also sleeping on your back seems to induce snoring more. So the side sleeping is better. The good old elbow, elbow on the side can stop a lot of
I wonder if
snoring.
there's some acupuncture points that you could, instead of just elbowing your partner,
Well,
you
that's
might,
acupuncture.
oh yeah, depending on where you hit it. Anyhow, that's something we could talk about another
Well,
time.
Michael Rossoff, who's visiting us today, might have some wonderful tips about that. He's an acupuncturist
Yeah, that's a good
and a
idea.
macrobiotic counselor. That's worth a very good booklet, isn't it? Yes,
Acupuncture for snorers.
acupuncture for snores. Yes, and earplugs are heavenly. I used to use earplugs because we would have animals like possums or whatever. I found out bears too were crunching in our leaves outside. So I was using earplugs, and they're heavenly. And you can still hear an alarm go off if you have a concern about that, and they help. And well, good luck with the snores.
Ginat, do you have other questions on this topic that you want us to?
Yeah, sure. Um, Someone's asking, a mobile phone that does not have Wi-Fi or cellular data, is that okay near your ear when you're sleeping?
um, it's better. It's better, and many people do disconnect their Wi-Fi at night, and some still use analog. I have a friend in Boulder who doesn't even have Wi-Fi in his house. He's an acupuncturist, and but I wouldn't have it right next to you. My teacher, Michio Kushi, used to say, don't even have a battery operated alarm clock near your head. Because we always sleep when we have the table next to us, and this influence is going right into our brains. So I think it's good to err on the side of being careful. I've even I have to have my cell phone sometimes, or I'm reading something online, and I do put it as far away from my pillow as I can. And better not to have it in the room. It's better not to have a computer in your bedroom too. But some of us live in small houses, and that's the only place we have for our computers. So it's very challenging these days.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
Anything else?
Yeah. We know that you've come out of this experience of losing your home, your possessions, your car, your husband, big turmoil in your life. How does that affect sleep?
Oh, well, I have to preempt it by saying I am the Olympic champion of sleep.
You get the medal.
I am, except for if something very intense happens, I do have the jitters throughout the night. That may happen once a year. I sympathize with those who feel that way every night. You're absorbing, the conflicts of the world, and I don't want it to affect your health. So for me, I am able to go to a peaceful place. I have a deep faith in spirituality, in God. I don't have a specific religion. I'm like Thomas Jefferson, a deist, and many in Adams, you know, um, a deep belief in the divine. And I just, I pray, but I'm not a nervous type of person.
What about dreams?
I do dream. I dream, yeah.
Do you record do you keep that in your log or and try to explore what you're learning from your dreams?
I've done that briefly, but I don't do it as often as I could. I think it's very revealing, and I have gone to the internet to find out what dreaming about a horse means, or dreaming about, you know, a snake. Micho did whole classes on dreams, and he used to say, if you dream about falling, you're eating too much fruit, as fruit falls down. And he would do lectures on that. If you dream about drowning, you're having too much water. And I've had a lot of fanciful dream. I dream about flying sometimes. He said that's from having poultry.
Or flying fish.
Or flying fish. So, but no, it's not a deep lesson I go through. I've had friends who were dream analysts, but now on the internet you can find out about your dreams. It's fascinating. It is. Do you, Lenny? Do you analyze your dreams?
Yeah, and I like to figure out what those images symbolize, represent, connect to in my own conscious and unconscious, rather than attributing it immediately to I'm flying, therefore I'm eating poultry, or or some kind of fowl. It's there may be something else that is connected to an elevated life, or a relief from the confines of the connections, the attachments that I have otherwise. Anything else, Ginat, before we go to some concluding?
No, go ahead.
No pressing. Are there some things that you haven't discussed that you would like to bring up?
I'd like to bring up a few more foods that cause anxiety, get us revved up, and can be very negative to us. And it's white refined sugar, which is in everything. I look at Whole Foods grain dishes and grain packages and granola, and they have cane sugar, white sugar. Sugar strips us of minerals, and depending on how much you have, of course, and it does deplete minerals, and can cause nervousness, anxiety. So the recipe for poor sleep would be having chocolate and popcorn right before you go to sleep at night. and too much caffeine. And even too much fruit juices can make you jittery, can make you over urinate, and what we call being too yin. And sodas are loaded, 12 teaspoons of sugar. I don't think this group would anyway touch a commercial soda, but it's something to pass along to your loved ones. Sugar is a huge one. Minerals, having sea vegetables every day is a blessing. Kombu and beans, wakame and soup, nori. Although nori has almost zero calcium because it's floated on water, but it's so delicious. And all the other seaweeds, the arame, the hijiki, if you can find hijiki now, and having root vegetables ground you. So if you're like forgetful or ditzy, or if you feel cold and fatigued, having a warm bowl of miso soup with root vegetables, and you can add cooked grains or cooked beans. Always keep grains and beans cooked in your kitchen, and you will be set to have some strengthening dishes. Today for lunch, Becky and Lenny's going to cook. He's going to cook soba. He's already cooked soba noodles. Soba is made with buckwheat, very warming, wonderful to have the buckwheat groats. My friend Leslie loves the buckwheat groats, and other people, of course. And it's made with buckwheat. It's warming and satisfying and quick, very quick. You talk about not having time to cook, but you know that cooking pasta is so satisfying and very easy and quick. And let's see what else I want to say. Well, I have a lot more to say, but I want to end my section with a quote from Viktor Frankl.
Well, let me just, before you do.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm going to give you the
No,
last
okay.
word,
Okay.
but I just wanted to mention about Jane. She is obviously very knowledgeable, very experienced, and she hasn't talked about the amount of teaching and travel that she and Lino have done around the world, and introducing a healthy lifestyle to thousands of people around the world. And as gentle and as easygoing as she presents herself, she also has a very deep, strong character, and the integrity transmits through the ideas about food and about the adherence to the standard kind of approach that we have all learned through the years studying, practicing macrobiotics. There have been a few topics that came up recently. Those of you who follow or live in North America and follow the election and some of the controversies regarding some of the things that have happened, and we don't want to get into the politics so much, but I know that Jane has spoken out very directly to the sources of people who have admired some of the low character people who have been presented as running the future of the American government. And I just wanted to, I don't know, you don't have to say anything, but certain people have been presented as heroes. Robert Kennedy, I guess I would say that's one, a very controversial character, a very opportunistic individual who's traveled a lot on his last name more than on his integrity or his character or his depth of understanding. And although many people might say, oh, he'd been great in the Department of Agriculture, talking about pesticides and fertilizers and organic food, getting into the health side is something that his background is, as a controversial subject, is fine. Anyhow, I know that Jane has had some outspoken comments about that, and you don't have to bring it up if you don't want to, but I just know that we follow a lifestyle and an approach to life that is rooted in integrity, honesty, and concern and compassion for all sentient beings, not just ones who believe what we believe. And the divisiveness that has arisen in the American political system is something that I think we need to speak out against. And as Jane and her family and Lino have gone through areas of prejudice and persecution and divisiveness, we need to be clearly honest and outspoken in what we also see as hypocritical and conspiratorial and contradictory. So anyhow, Jane is somebody who I know will not keep quiet when she sees something of injustice. So you don't have to speak up, but I just wanted to acknowledge you. And if you want to use that as an intro to your concluding remarks.
Oh, well, with the election, there is a lot of division, and I have my very strong opinions, and I'll just come right out and say I'm a lifelong Democrat. And we are facing 4 years of a president who has aligned himself with fascist ideas. Hopefully, and I expect there will be good things to come from his administration. He's already changed several of his campaign philosophies, and there may be good that comes from it. I keep up with the news, but we are a country with free elections. I assume this was a free election, a legitimate one. But there are things happening in all the countries, Lenny, that are very concerning. There are wars going on right now, horrible injustices going on against people. I would have thought we would have evolved out of this by now, right? I mean, really. And but I really pray and hope for the best. We shall see, right? But when the president-elect has a meal with his cabinet and serves McDonald's, one can't help but raise an eyebrow. And we'll see what Robert Kennedy Jr. does. He tried to get into the Democrat administration, and they dejected him. But I think they have some very good ideas. But I like to say even a broken clock is right twice a day. And but I'm a hopeful person, and I'm an observant person. Let us all observe these politics. They affect us. The word politics means people. This is the chance for us to really pay attention, to protest. They had better not quell protests. That's the First Amendment. And there's talk about destroying the Constitution. Let us be vigilant. Trump will be able to appoint judges all over the country and Supreme Court justices, possibly if one retires, or etc. So it's very serious, but I'm a hopeful person, positive person, but I keep my eyes out. And I told my friends, I'm ready to get on the bus to Washington and do what I can as a citizen to to protest injustices or disagreements. We have to speak out and not be afraid to speak out. But God bless America and all the other countries of the world, of course. Poor America is dealing so much with violence, domestic violence.
And Israel and Ukraine and China. I mean, yes.
Yes. And then the wars, of course. So we, my teachers, Micho and Abilene Kushi and the George Osawa was in prison because he was opposed to war. And my teacher Micho and Lino as well were very passionate about creating one peaceful world where people can live together in health and humanity and with a high education and a healthy environment. One of the main premises of macrobiotics is eat so the environment is healthy. You know, because raising farm animals can destroy the environment. So that's peace and healthy earth. And I wanted to close, or
Yeah.
at least at this point, Viktor Frankl was a survivor of the Holocaust. And he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And I've just been through a crisis, but many of you have too. You're living a crisis, you've been through crises, personal or political. And he said, when we no longer are able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think macrobiotics gives us such an opportunity to change ourselves and to be the strongest and the best and the smartest and loving people that we can be.
Thank you. Anything else, Jane? All
Hey,
right.
Jane. Politics brought up a lot of
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
yeah, so I might
I
skip
was
all of
mainly
that.
using that as an opportunity to acknowledge Jane's willingness to speak out when she sees something that she sees as an injustice. And I think it's important for all of us, whichever side of the aisle or whatever side of the party we're on, we need to be able to speak out honestly,
Yeah,
openly,
yeah.
and without fear.
We do.
And I think fearlessness is one of the underlying principles of macrobiotics. Being willing to try brown rice when you're diagnosed with a serious illness.
Mhm.
Being willing to go to the doctor and have surgery when you're diagnosed with a serious illness.
Yes.
It's courage on both sides.
That's right.
Anyhow, I didn't mean to start a political debate, but anyhow, if there is something that you want to
Someone is asking about sleep apnea. I mean, that's a medical condition. I don't know if we.
well, we wanted to say that those people who have more specific questions for Jane, with your newsletter, Ginat, and with Jane's website, can we just post the website address
Mhm.
on this chat?
Mhm.
Ginat can do it, I think, or somebody, so that you can know how to reach Jane Stanchich directly. She's glad to continue the conversation one-on-one with you. She does health counseling. She does remote health counseling as well as cooking advisement and
Mhm.
classes,
Mhm.
so that you'll be able to reach her and maintain this communication.
So
Is that
what
something?
is your www Great Life Global?
That's right.
GreatLifeGlobal.com.
.com.
Great Life Global. Got that? .com.
Yep.
Okay.
And you'll be able to contact her, and she will give you further support in your journey or in your counsel with your students, with your clients, with your friends. I know that many of you have a lot of experience already, but she, as a teacher, as a counselor for many years, can give you some guidance.
Mhm.
Do you want to give a preview to next month's forums, Ginat, or are we ready for that yet? Or are there more questions or comments on this?
No, next month.
Is it Christiane?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, I guess we're not ready.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
there will
I
be
wonder
one.
if you
What's
have
the
in
date?
this room. I wonder if you have other guests in the room there with you, don't you?
Well, they're in another part of the house, so I don't know
Oh,
if
they've already left.
Michael
Okay.
or Becky want to say anything?
Are they on the galley?
Oh, I see. They're
Oh,
sitting in another room. I
oh,
understand.
good, Michael.
All right. Jane,
Oh.
let me ask you one more question that's kind of come up here.
50. Okay.
Some people are judging the religion by its adherents. They're judging macrobiotics by how healthy we look and length of life and troubles that we have and normal human relationships and activities. Can you give can you give a word about that? A snake just walked in the room. Can you what can you say about that?
I don't know exactly what they mean by religion and judging. Can you explain?
Yeah, those are my words. The point is that can we say macrobiotics is a wonderful practice and that the practitioner is at fault? Or can we say, no, there's something wrong with the method? Or if we look at and we say that it's not ideal results across the board. I personally, I bristle when someone said, oh, they died young. Because what does that mean? You know, what is young? And how do we know what their karma is and what their mission and their why they're here and why they have an illness? So I wonder what kind of answers you give or think.
Well, one of the brilliant aspects of macrobiotics is that there's not one diet. There's not one specific way that you have to eat or one specific exercise you have to do. There are endless combinations. So a person has endless choices of what foods they choose, what condiments, salt, oils, ways of cooking, and also lifestyle, how they live. Are they involved in risky life situations? Do they fly on airplanes every week, which can have a serious side effect? How are their emotions? As you said, Ginat, people have many different experiences. They've inherited. Sometimes it's called generational PTSD. We don't know about their backgrounds. Many of them don't discuss it. Some macrobiotic teachers, or I would say colleagues, don't have therapy. Some of them don't have physicians. Everybody makes different choices in life. I lean towards living a careful life, eating perhaps more simply. I tend to be a careful type of person. Some of our macrobiotic teachers traveled the world. They went to the Congo. They went all over the world. Osawa gave himself a virus so that he could heal it. And if you study these men and women, because the women were involved too, they were extremely courageous people. They were pioneers. The pioneers in America didn't have it easy. They risked their lives to discover things. So many macrobiotic teachers lived lives that were extremely extraordinary and
exhaustive.
They didn't live in a quiet little cabin in the woods. You couldn't get Micho in a quiet little cabin in the woods. He lived in the heart of Boston and
or New York.
Traveled the world. Osawa went all over the world and spoke out. And Osawa actually experimented with foods. He would eat a whole pound of cheese to see how he felt afterwards. These were extraordinary people. And so some people, as you said, Ginat, have backgrounds. They have their path in life, but some have tragically died. It's extremely tragic, but Yeah, I believe in cause and effect. I believe there's a cause for everything. We don't know about these people's personal lives, their psychology, even their lifestyle. I just admire and love them so much, and I miss them. I could cry right now. But there have been many who have passed on.
And I want to offer also that, as Jane said earlier, this is kind of a practice that we're constantly working with ourselves in relationship to what we do and what we eat, how we live our lives. And if each of you is feeling good doing what you're doing, you can modify more salt, more vegetables, less grains.
Mhm.
Find what works for you. Don't live your life because the example of someone else that worked or didn't work. But if you found that these practices of macrobiotics, of the principles that you've applied, are working for you, stick with it and modify it based on what you discover. As Jane said, there's not one way, there's your way. And if it's working and making you feel good and you're enjoying your life, more power, go for it.
Mhm.
Don't stop because somebody died at 80 or 75. That's the issue, like that's their issue, not yours. If it feels good, go for it. If
Mhm.
you're feeling good, continue.
Yes.
Jane, when you're talking about cause and effects just now, do you find a first cause being our thinking, which then influences what foods we eat, what we physically do, our lifestyle? Or do you think the opposite? Do you think that it's the food that we're eating is creating our thinking? Is there one that's primary over the other?
That's a wonderful question. It's an eternal question. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I believe that thinking comes first because it's our thoughts that get us in the kitchen. It's our thoughts that goes to buy the book. It's our thoughts to have healthy friends, a healthy home. It's our attitude and our thoughts that move us to the next stage. And by saying that, I do know that if if we feed our bodies healthy foods, we have more vitality to cook, to exercise. It really works both ways. We can only control so much in our lives, but we can control what we put in our mouths, what we put in our brain, who we surround ourselves with, what we wear, what we read, all that. We have tremendous power. It really works both ways. What do you think, Lenny? Which comes first, the
Yeah,
thoughts?
I would say yin and yang are complementary opposites,
Mhm.
and that the two make one. And it's
Mm.
not like this or that, it's both and.
Mhm.
And it's a constant connection. And when we separate thinking from feeling, feeling from being, we're only dividing ourselves in an artificial way, that the reality is that our body and mind is one.
Mm.
Any chance we could get Michael Rossoff's response?
Yes, Michael, would you like to add in?
Maybe not.
Maybe he's muted.
No,
Oh,
thank
oh.
you. I think it's a little late for me to hop in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Another
it's
time.
almost 2 hours, and I know a lot of people have other commitments for the day, but we can continue this, as I said, directly with Jane. She's glad to respond to your comments, emails, and
Yes.
connections. And we have, again, appreciate Ginat taking the time, all of you for coming here this day, this beginning of a new year. We know that upcoming is the year of the snake, and we wonder of those of you who will be celebrating your snake year. Congratulations. It's a time for cunning and stealthy movement,
Ooh.
as well as a very kind of unexpected developments in this
Mhm.
2025.
Mhm.
Thanks again,
Well, in
Jane.
that case,
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you.
also for me, big
Okay.
hugs.
Yes,
Thank
big
you so
hug,
much.
big hug, and our love
Thank
to
you so much, Jane.
God bless you on your journeys and your time in India and your wonderful people you're with. And we've discovered there's a Jewish synagogue in India.
Yeah, Cochin. She was just there. Yeah.
The world is weaving together, is the way I like to put it. And I
The
have
Cochin
great
Synagogue is in mothballs at the moment.
Oh, okay. But I'd love to
Um,
say hello to all of you out there. I see Susan on her treadmill. I see Marsha, all of you, Leslie, Kathy. I could go
Erica's
on and on.
there, yeah.
Erica was here, and Sylvia. All of you. I can't say all the names, but bless each of you. Oh, and I will send. Ginat has my email. So I see a lot of you, a lot of your names here. And
Good.
from friend to friend.
Yeah.
Good
So
Happy New Year.
let's do
Happy
this.
New Year. Yay!
Yes, yes. Happy new moon. Let's open up now.
Happy new moon.
I don't need, yes, I don't need to call anymore on anybody. Whoever would like to speak. I see Sylvia is waiting very patiently. Jane, you're welcome to stay with us if you want to. If you've had enough and have other things to do, of course, that's clear. I'm going to stop the recording. No, I'm not going. How do I do that? Hold on.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, I'll just keep recording because I don't know how to stop. So just everyone open up your microphones, your loudspeakers, and let's start with Sylvia.
So hi, this was for Jane. I wanted to tell her that I normally don't have my clothing on by 8 a.m. I'm normally in pajamas, but I'm dressed today out of respect for Jane. I put it in the chat, but I wanted to tell her directly. That's all.
Very nice. Very nice. Anyone else? Just go ahead and jump in if you like.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
West away.
So I'm kind of confused about the whole furor against vaccines, because when I first studied with Micho and Herman and Cornelia, they didn't say anything against them. And back then, of course, we didn't have that many vaccines. But when did this teaching crop up and why? You know, because there's so many statistics about how many people were saved by vaccines from like polio and measles back in the 50s. So I wonder if somebody could elaborate on that.
Anyone?
They were very much against vaccines. George Osawa and my parents. They always were.
Can you explain why?
Well, if we understand the way nature works, it's nature is always supporting us. So vaccines comes from the same way of thinking as war. It's based on the same. So war exists in our way of thinking first before the action. Vaccination is also coming from that same way of thinking, that there's enemies out there to get us. We need to be protected. George Osawa's main premise is that we're responsible for everything, and that the world when I was a child, he told me that I was responsible for everything in the world. Doesn't and anything that's happening, including anything. He made it clear he meant everything, whether it be on the other side of the globe or not. And it took me until I was 50 years old to understand what he was talking about. But vaccines is one of the symptoms of not being responsible for one's own health, blaming it on something else. And so, you know, it's like enemies and all that. It's not, there's no such thing as enemies. So that's what he was teaching. That's the foundational premise of how I grew up, and I understand what macrobiotics is really about.